Picture this. You're cruising down the street when suddenly a bright red muscle car with a massive white stripe roars past. If you grew up in the 70s, you know exactly what that car is. The 1974 Ford Gran Torino from Starsky and Hutch wasn't just a prop. It was practically the third main character of the show. But here's the thing. Almost everything you think you know about this iconic TV car is probably wrong. From the color that was never supposed to be red to the actor who deliberately tried to destroy it, we're counting down 20 weird facts about Starsky's Gran Torino that will make you see this famous ride in a whole new light. So buckle up, because some of these facts are stranger than any case Starsky and Hutch ever solved. And if you're a fan of classic TV cars, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive. Number 20. The car was never supposed to be red. The Gran Torino's iconic bright red paint job almost never happened. When Starsky and Hutch creator William Blinn first pitched the show, he envisioned something completely different, a green Chevrolet Camaro convertible. That's right, green, not red, and not even a Ford. The original concept would have given us a completely different automotive icon, one that probably wouldn't have stood out nearly as much on screen. But here's where it gets interesting. Ford's Studio TV car loan program stepped in and changed television history. This program, which provided vehicles to TV productions at no cost in exchange for product placement, offered the producers a deal they couldn't refuse. Free cars for filming meant more budget for other aspects of the show. The producers took one look at Ford's offerings and landed on the Gran Torino. But they still had to make it distinctive. The bright red paint, officially Ford's bright red color code, 2B, combined with that bold white vector stripe running down each side, created an instantly recognizable look. It's funny how budget constraints and corporate partnerships can accidentally create pop culture icons. If Blinn had gotten his green Camaro, would anyone even remember what car Starsky drove? Probably not. Sometimes the best creative decisions are the ones forced on you by circumstances. Number 19. The striped tomato nickname started as a production joke. Every icon needs a good nickname, and Starsky's Gran Torino had one of the best, the striped tomato. But this wasn't some carefully crafted marketing term or fan creation. It started as an inside joke among the production crew, who thought the bright red car with its white stripe looked like, well, a tomato with racing stripes. The joke was too good to keep behind the scenes. Writers started working it into the show's dialogue, usually having Hutch make sarcastic comments about his partner's flashy ride. David Soul, who played Hutch, delivered these lines with perfect deadpan humor, turning what could have been throwaway jokes into memorable moments. The nickname stuck because it perfectly captured the car's over-the-top appearance and the show's tongue-in-cheek attitude. Fans latched onto it immediately, and soon, striped tomato became as much a part of the show's vocabulary as Zebra 3, or any of the other police codes. What makes this even better is that the nickname highlighted the fundamental difference between the two main characters. Starsky loved his loud, attention-grabbing car, while Hutch constantly mocked it. This dynamic, expressed through their attitudes toward the Gran Torino, helped define their entire relationship. A production joke became character development. That's good television. Number 18. They used around 10 different cars during filming. Here's something that might blow your mind. That wasn't just one car you were watching. Tear through the streets of Bay City. The production actually used around 10 different Gran Torinos throughout the show's run from 1974 to 1979. They needed multiple cars for a simple reason. Television production is brutal on vehicles. You had stunt cars that took the real beating during chase scenes and jumps. You had hero cars for close-ups and dialogue scenes. You had backup cars for when the others were being repaired. And you had cars specifically set up for different types of shots. The models varied slightly too. While they tried to stick with 1974 models, they also used some 1975 and 1976 Gran Torinos when needed. To the casual viewer, these all looked identical thanks to that distinctive paint job, but eagle-eyed fans can spot subtle differences in trim, badges, and interior details between episodes. This multiple car approach wasn't unique to Starsky and Hutch, it's standard practice in Hollywood. But what made it challenging for this show was maintaining consistency with such a distinctive vehicle. Every car had to be painted exactly the same, with the stripe in precisely the right position. One slightly off-angle stripe and sharp-eyed viewers would notice. The logistics of keeping all these cars running and looking identical must have been a nightmare for the transportation department. Number 17. Paul Michael Glaser hated driving the car. Here's an ironic twist. Paul Michael Glaser, who played Starsky, couldn't stand driving the Gran Torino. The man whose character was defined by his love for the striped tomato actually despised getting behind the wheel of it. His complaints were numerous and specific. The car handled poorly, especially during the high-speed chases the show was famous for. The steering was heavy and unresponsive, the brakes were sketchy, and remember, this was the 70s. Power steering wasn't as refined as it is today, and these cars were built for straight-line speed, not maneuverability. Glaser's frustration led to some interesting on-set behavior. He admitted in later interviews that he deliberately abused the car during stunt scenes, partly out of frustration, and partly because he thought it would make the scenes more dramatic. He'd slam on the brakes harder than necessary, take corners more aggressively than the stunt coordinators asked for, and generally treat the car like he was trying to break it. The irony is delicious. Millions of viewers watch Starsky lovingly care for his car, defend it from Hutch's mockery, and treat it like his most prized possession. Meanwhile, the actor playing him was secretly hoping the thing would just die already. It's a testament to Glaser's acting skills that none of this animosity ever showed up on screen. Starsky's love for the striped tomato always seemed genuine, even if the actor's feelings were exactly the opposite. Number 16. The engine sounds were completely fake. Every time you heard that Gran Torino roar to life or squeal its tires around a corner, you were listening to a lie. The engine sounds in Starsky and Hutch were almost entirely dubbed in during post-production. And here's the really weird part. They often used manual transmission sounds even though the actual cars had automatic transmissions. This wasn't unusual for television production at the time. Recording clean engine sounds during filming was nearly impossible with all the background noise, crew chatter, and technical limitations of on-location sound recording. Plus, the real sounds of a mid-70s Gran Torino with emissions-choked engines weren't exactly thrilling. So the sound department got creative. They recorded various muscle cars with manual transmissions, creating a library of revs, shifts, and tire squeals that sounded way more exciting than reality. Sharp-eared viewers might notice the car apparently shifting gears during chase scenes when the interior shots clearly show an automatic transmission selector. The production team prioritized excitement over accuracy, figuring most viewers wouldn't notice or care about the discrepancy. They were right. The dubbed sounds made the car seem more powerful and aggressive than it actually was. Combined with creative editing and camera angles, these fake sounds helped sell the illusion that the Gran Torino was a fire-breathing monster rather than a somewhat sluggish 70s land yacht. It's movie magic at its finest, or most deceptive depending on how you look at it. Number 15. Some cars had the rare 460 Lima 5.8 engine. Now here's where things get interesting for the gearheads. While most people assume all the Gran Torinos use the standard engine options, some of the stunt cars were actually equipped with Ford's massive 460 Lima V8 engine. This wasn't a standard Gran Torino option. It was typically reserved for Ford's full-size cars and trucks. The 460 Lima, identified by VIN code A, was a beast of an engine even in its emission-strangled 70s form. We're talking about 7.5 liters of displacement here. But before you get too excited, remember, this was the Malaise era of American automobiles. Thanks to new emissions regulations and the move to net horsepower ratings, this massive engine only produced around 202 horsepower. Still, 200 horses in a relatively light car gave better performance than the standard engines. The stunt coordinators likely chose these engines for their durability and torque, rather than outright speed. When you're abusing cars day after day for television production, you need something that can take a beating and keep running. The 460 Lima was known for being nearly indestructible. Most viewers never knew they were watching different engines in different scenes. But it explains why some chase sequences seem to have more punch than others. When you see the Gran Torino really moving in certain episodes, chances are you're watching one of the 460 equipped stunt cars earning its keep. Number 14. David Soul kept sliding across the bench. Seat. Here's a production problem that led to a permanent change in the cars. David Soul couldn't stay in place during action scenes. The original Gran Torinos came with bench seats, and every time Paul Michael Glaser yanked the wheel into a hard right turn, Soul would slide across the slippery vinyl seat and crash into his co-star. This wasn't just uncomfortable, it was ruining takes. The cameras would catch Soul desperately trying to brace himself or grabbing onto anything he could find to stay in position. Sometimes he'd end up practically in Glaser's lap, which wasn't exactly the dynamic they were going for. The situation was especially bad during the more aggressive stunt sequences. The solution came in the form of bucket seats. After the actors complained enough, the production team retrofitted one of the main hero cars, designated Torino No. 2, with bucket seats and a center console. This kept both actors in their proper positions and probably prevented a few on-set injuries. The bench seat versus bucket seat situation created continuity issues throughout the series. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot which car they're using in any given scene by checking the interior, but most people were too caught up in the action to notice whether Hutch was sliding around or staying put. It's another example of how practical production needs shaped what viewers saw on screen. Number 13. The car was a victim of the Malaise era. The Gran Torino looked like it could eat other cars for breakfast, but looks were deceiving. This was a muscle car trapped in what enthusiasts call the Malaise era, that dark period in American automotive history when emissions regulations and safety requirements neutered performance cars. The 1974 Gran Torino came at the worst possible time. Just a few years earlier, it could have packed a genuine high-performance engine. But new federal regulations meant lower compression ratios, air pumps, catalytic converters, and all sorts of power-robbing equipment. The result was a car that looked fast but wasn't. Even the top engine options were shadows of their former selves. Where a late 60s muscle car might have 400 plus horsepower, the Gran Torino made do with engines producing maybe half that. And those were gross ratings. The new net horsepower numbers were even more depressing. This performance deficit created challenges for filming. The stunt drivers had to work harder to make the car look exciting on screen. Those tire-squealing takeoffs required careful clutch work on the manual-equipped camera cars, or brake torquing on the automatics. The sliding turns were more about momentum and camera angles than actual speed. In a way, the Gran Torino was perfect for television. It had all the visual drama of a muscle car without the actual performance that might make it genuinely dangerous for actors and stunt performers. It was a sheep in wolf's clothing, which was probably safer for everyone involved. Number 12. You can spot the battle damage in later seasons. By the third and fourth seasons of Starsky and Hutch, the Gran Torinos were showing their battle scars. If you know what to look for, you can see dents that weren't quite hammered out, hastily repaired bodywork, and missing trim pieces. It's like a game of spot the damage for obsessive fans. The abuse these cars took was incredible. Multiple takes of chase scenes, stunt jumps, deliberate crashes for dramatic effect. It all added up. The transportation department did their best to keep the cars looking good, but there's only so much you can do with limited time and budget. Some specific things to watch for: missing Gran Torino badges on the rear quarters, slightly misaligned stripes after body repairs, different shades of red where panels were repainted, and interior pieces that don't quite match between shots. The windshield frames took particular abuse and often show evidence of being replaced. What's remarkable is how well they managed to hide most of this damage. Through clever camera angles, strategic parking positions, and quick cuts, the production team kept the illusion alive that this was still the same pristine car from the pilot episode, but freeze-frame technology has revealed the truth. By the end of the series, these cars looked like they'd been through a war, because they had. 4 years of television production is basically automotive combat, and the Gran Torinos had the scars to prove it. Number 11. Only a few original cars survive today. When Starsky and Hutch wrapped in 1979, Ford's studio loan program required the cars to be returned and auctioned off. The two main hero cars went to collectors, but tracking down what happened to all 10 or so Gran Torinos used in production has become a detective story worthy of the show itself. Car historians and collectors have spent decades trying to identify and authenticate original Starsky and Hutch Gran Torinos. The problem is that many replicas have been built over the years, and distinguishing a real TV car from a well-done clone requires serious detective work. Some authenticated survivors have incredible provenance. One of the main hero cars is displayed at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles. Walk around it, and you can still see the camera mounts drilled into the body and signatures from cast members inside the door jambs. It's like an automotive time capsule. Other verified cars have sold at auction for serious money. We're talking 6 figures for a car that originally stickered for around $4,500. But buyers aren't just getting a car, they're getting a piece of television history. The search continues for the remaining cars. Some might be sitting in barns, unrecognized by owners who don't realize they have a piece of TV history. Others were probably junked years ago after being deemed too damaged to save. Every few years, someone claims to have found another original, sparking debates in the collector community about authentication and provenance. Number 10. Ford actually made a limited edition Starsky and Hutch Gran Torino. In 1976, Ford did something unprecedented. They created a limited edition Starsky and Hutch Gran Torino for the public. This wasn't just a dealer add-on package or aftermarket modification. This was a factory-authorized, VIN-coded special edition. Approximately 1,305 of these cars rolled off the assembly line. Ford saw the marketing potential of the show's popularity and decided to cash in. The package included the distinctive bright red paint, the white vector stripe, though slightly different from the TV version, and special badges identifying it as a Starsky and Hutch edition. But here's the weird part. These factory versions weren't exactly like the TV cars. The stripe was slightly different, the wheels weren't quite right, and they came with whatever engine the buyer ordered rather than any specific performance package. It was close enough for most fans, but different enough that purists could tell. The existence of these factory editions has created confusion in the collector market. Some sellers try to pass them off as actual TV cars, while others don't realize the difference. For Ford, it was a marketing success that proved the power of television product placement. Today, these factory editions are collectible in their own right. They represent a unique moment when a TV car became so popular that the manufacturer decided to sell replicas to the public. It wouldn't be the last time, but the Starsky and Hutch Gran Torino was one of the first. Number 9. Camera mounts and equipment are still visible on surviving cars. Walk up to one of the authenticated TV cars today, and you'll see something fascinating. The scars of television production permanently etched into the metal. Camera mounts, spotlight brackets, and various attachment points are drilled right into the body. These aren't subtle modifications either. We're talking about serious hardware mounting points that would make any car collector cringe. Some cars have metal plates welded to the frame to support heavy 1970s camera equipment. Others show evidence of hood-mounted camera rigs that gave those dramatic chase scene perspectives. The Peterson Automotive Museum's example is particularly well preserved in this regard. You can see exactly where cameras were mounted for different types of shots. There are reinforcement plates inside the trunk where equipment was stored. The interior shows mounting points for cameras that filmed the actors during driving scenes. These modifications tell the story of 1970s television production. Before lightweight digital cameras and sophisticated stabilization systems, getting dynamic shots required bolting heavy equipment directly to the cars. Each mounting point represents hundreds of takes, countless hours of filming, and the technical innovation required to create exciting television on a budget. For historians and fans, these modifications are more valuable than a pristine restoration. They're physical evidence of how the show was made, permanent reminders that this wasn't just a car, it was a rolling film set that helped create one of the most iconic cop shows of the 70s. Number 8. The car symbolized the characters' personality differences. The Gran Torino wasn't just transportation, it was a rolling metaphor for the differences between Starsky and Hutch. The show's creators used the car as a visual shorthand for their contrasting personalities, and it worked brilliantly. Starsky's love for his flashy, attention-grabbing ride told you everything about his character. He was bold, passionate, and not afraid to stand out. The bright red paint and white stripe matched his extroverted personality. He wore his emotions on his sleeve just like his car wore its distinctive livery. Hutch's constant mockery of the striped tomato revealed his more reserved, practical nature. His own vehicle choices throughout the series, beaten-up junkers that barely ran, showed he valued function over form. The running gag about the car's appearance became a way to explore their partnership dynamics. What made this symbolism work was its consistency. Throughout all 4 seasons, their attitudes toward the Gran Torino never changed. It became a touchstone for their relationship, a source of friendly conflict that reminded viewers these were two very different people who somehow made the perfect team. Even in serious episodes dealing with heavy themes, a quick joke about the car could provide levity and remind viewers of the show's fundamental dynamic. The Gran Torino was more than just product placement or a cool prop. It was a character development tool that worked on a visual and narrative level. Not bad for a car that was never supposed to be in the show. Number 7. Most visual modifications were actually stock. Here's something that might surprise you. Despite looking heavily customized, the Gran Torino's body was mostly stock from the factory. Those big wheels, that jacked up rear end, the aggressive stance, it all looked like serious custom work, but Ford's designers had already done most of the heavy lifting. The 1974 Gran Torino Sport came with factory options that gave it that muscle car look. The sports roof fastback body style, the aggressive front end, the wide stance, all straight from Dearborn. Even those distinctive body lines and that swooping roofline were standard equipment. What the TV production added was mainly the paint job. That bright red with white vector stripe was the key modification that transformed a stock Gran Torino into a television icon. They also added slightly larger rear tires to give it that hot rod rake and occasionally tweaked the suspension for specific shots. This use of mostly stock components was brilliant from a production standpoint. When you're beating up cars week after week, you need to be able to find replacement parts easily. Using stock body panels meant they could source repairs from any Ford dealer or salvage yard. No custom fabrication meant lower costs and faster turnaround times. It also meant that Ford's factory special edition could closely replicate the TV car without expensive tooling changes. The magic was in the paint, not the panels. Sometimes the best movie magic is the simplest, and the Gran Torino proved you didn't need extensive modifications to create an unforgettable car. Number 6. Interior details change constantly between cars. Freeze frame any episode of Starsky and Hutch and start comparing interior shots, you'll quickly notice that no two cars had exactly the same cabin. Shift knobs, steering wheels, seat patterns, dashboard configurations, they all varied depending on which car was being used and what had been repaired or replaced that week. The most obvious changes were the bench seat versus bucket seat configurations we mentioned earlier, but look closer and you'll spot different gauge clusters, various radio designs, and even different door panel styles. Some cars had wood grain trim, others didn't. Some had center consoles, others had bare transmission tunnels. These inconsistencies drove continuity supervisors crazy, but were unavoidable given the production realities. When a car needed interior repairs, the crew used whatever parts were available. If they couldn't find an exact match for a damaged seat, they'd use something close enough and hope viewers wouldn't notice. The gear shift patterns were particularly amusing. Some cars had floor shifters, others had column shifts. In some episodes, you can see the shift pattern change between shots as they cut between different cars. The fact that most engine sounds were dubbed in anyway meant it didn't really matter if the interior showed an automatic when the soundtrack suggested a manual. For modern viewers used to digital perfection and CGI fixes, these inconsistencies are charming reminders of practical filmmaking. Every mismatched interior detail tells a story of a production team doing their best with limited resources and time. Number 5. The undercover cops driving a bright red car made no sense. Let's address the elephant in the room, or rather the bright red Gran Torino in the precinct parking lot. Starsky and Hutch were supposedly undercover detectives, yet they drove the most conspicuous car in Bay City. The show's creators knew this made no logical sense, and occasionally played it for laughs. The in-universe explanation was that Starsky owned the car personally and used it for work, but that raises even more questions. What undercover cop uses their personal vehicle, especially one that stands out like a sore thumb, for police work? How did they ever successfully tail suspects in a car everyone could spot from 3 blocks away? The real answer, of course, is that television logic trumps real-world logic. The show needed a distinctive car that viewers would instantly recognize, and realism took a backseat to visual impact. The bright red Gran Torino became part of the show's larger-than-life approach to police work, where shootouts happened weekly and every case wrapped up neatly in an hour. Some episodes actually addressed this absurdity. Criminals would spot the distinctive car and know the cops were coming. Other characters would mock the idea of undercover work in such a visible vehicle, but mostly everyone just accepted that in the Starsky and Hutch universe, you could be a successful undercover detective while driving a car that screamed, "Look at me," from every angle. It was gloriously ridiculous and perfectly 70s. Number 4. Identifying real TV cars versus replicas is nearly impossible. The popularity of Starsky and Hutch has created a cottage industry of Gran Torino replicas, and distinguishing a real TV car from a well-done fake has become incredibly difficult. Even experts sometimes struggle to authenticate original vehicles. The problem starts with how many cars were used during production. With around 10 cars in various conditions, tracking provenance becomes complicated. Add in 40-plus years of ownership changes, modifications, and restorations, and you've got an authentication nightmare. Replicas range from quick paint jobs on random Gran Torinos to obsessively accurate recreations using period-correct parts. Some builders have studied freeze frames to replicate exact stripe placement, interior configurations, and even battle damage. The best replicas are virtually indistinguishable from the originals. Authentication usually requires multiple forms of evidence. Documentation from Ford's studio program helps, but papers can be faked. Physical evidence like camera mounting points and production modifications are better, but clever replica builders have been known to add fake mounting holes. VIN research can help, but only if accurate records exist. The situation has led to disputes in the collector community. Cars have been sold as originals only to be later exposed as replicas. Other times, legitimate TV cars have been dismissed as fakes because their provenance couldn't be definitively proven. It's ironic that a show about detectives has created so many automotive mysteries that may never be solved. Number 3. The car spawned an entire merchandising empire. The Gran Torino's popularity extended far beyond the television screen. It became one of the most merchandised TV cars ever, spawning everything from die-cast models to slot cars to full-size replicas. The merchandising started almost immediately. Toy companies rushed to produce Starsky and Hutch Gran Torinos in every possible scale. Corgi, Dinky, and Matchbox all had versions. Some included tiny Starsky and Hutch figures. Others had working features like opening doors and hoods. These toys are now valuable collectibles themselves. But it went beyond toys. You could buy Starsky and Hutch Gran Torino model kits, posters, lunchboxes, and even shower curtains. The car's image appeared on everything from t-shirts to beach towels. If you could put a picture on it, someone probably made a Starsky and Hutch version. The merchandising continues today. New die-cast models are still being produced. Video games feature the car. It appears at comic conventions and car shows. The Gran Torino has transcended its television origins to become a pop culture icon, recognizable even to people who've never seen the show. What's remarkable is how the car's image has remained valuable for nearly 50 years. While other TV cars have faded from memory, the striped tomato continues to generate licensing revenue. It's a testament to the power of good design and the enduring appeal of 70s nostalgia. That simple paint scheme created a marketing phenomenon that nobody could have predicted. Number 2, multiple TV cars had different engines and specs. Here's where things get really confusing for Gran Torino enthusiasts. Not only were multiple cars used during filming, but they all had different specifications. The production team used whatever Gran Torinos they could get their hands on, regardless of engine or options. Some cars had the base 351 Cleveland 5.8, others packed the 351 modified, a few had the big 460 Lima. Transmission options varied between 3-speed automatics and 4-speed manuals, despite what the dubbed soundtrack suggested. Some had power steering, others didn't. Some had air conditioning, others had empty dashboards. This hodgepodge of specifications created interesting situations during filming. A chase scene might start with a car equipped with a small block engine and end with one powered by a big block. The acceleration characteristics would be completely different, but creative editing and those dubbed engine sounds helped maintain the illusion. The stunt coordinators had to know each car's capabilities. The 460 equipped cars could handle certain stunts better than the 351 cars. Manual transmission cars were preferred for specific shots where gear changes were visible. The automatics were easier on the actors during dialogue scenes. For modern collectors trying to create accurate replicas, this variation is maddening. Which specification is correct when the TV show used everything from base models to loaded versions? The answer is that they're all correct, which makes the replica builders' jobs both easier and harder at the same time. Number 1. The original hero, car, still has cast signatures. Inside, the ultimate piece of Starsky and Hutch memorabilia sits in the Peterson Automotive Museum, and it contains treasures that no replica could ever match. Inside the door jambs and under the hood of this authenticated hero car are signatures from the cast and crew, personal messages frozen in time from 1976. Paul Michael Glaser and David Soul both signed the car during production, along with various crew members. These weren't publicity signatures done at a car show years later. These were working signatures casually scrawled during downtime on set. Some are barely visible now, faded by time but still legible if you know where to look. The signatures tell a story beyond their mere existence. They're proof that despite all the complaining about the car's handling, despite the long hours and difficult stunts, the cast and crew recognized they were part of something special. You don't sign a prop car unless you think it might matter someday. What makes these signatures even more valuable is their placement. They're not on easily replaceable parts. They're on the actual body structure. Any restoration that removed these signatures would destroy irreplaceable history. The museum has wisely chosen preservation over perfection. This hero car represents the perfect convergence of television history and automotive culture. It's not just a car with a famous paint job, it's a time capsule containing the actual fingerprints of the people who made Starsky and Hutch a cultural phenomenon. In a world of replicas and recreations, these faded signatures are proof that this specific chunk of Detroit iron was there when television history was being made. And that's worth more than any perfect restoration could ever be. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about the striped tomato that prove truth is stranger than fiction. From Paul Michael Glaser secretly trying to destroy the car he was supposed to love, to Ford cashing in with their own special edition, the Gran Torino story is full of surprises. Which fact shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into TV car history, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got more automotive mysteries from your favorite shows coming up. Thanks for riding along with us today, and we'll see you next time when we uncover more hidden stories from television's most famous wheels.